The generation that was told to go outside and be home when the streetlights came on is now getting slack for being too involved in their kids' lives. Honestly, that paradox tells you everything you need to understand about Gen X parents. If you grew up in the 60s, 70s, or even the early 80s, you probably remember coming home to a completely empty house. Your parents weren't there because they were working, both of them in fact, probably for the first time in American history at that scale. Between 1970 and 1990, the percentage of mothers in the workforce with children under 6 jumped from around 37% to nearly 60%. You were a latchkey kid. You let yourself in, made something to eat, and it was no biggie. Researchers have defined Gen X as one of the least parented, least nurtured generations in history. That isn't hyperbole. You learned to figure out your own problems because there wasn't really any other option. Your mom wasn't going to contact the school to contest your grades, and your dad definitely wasn't going to intervene in your friendship drama. He'd tell you to work it out yourself or not at all. That experience of daily autonomy had a fundamental impact on how you saw the world. Yet the independence was coupled with something else, a kind of emotional self-sufficiency that looked like strength, but sometimes felt like loneliness. Fast forward to now, and if you look at what people are saying about Gen X parents, you'll notice a pattern. Many Gen X parents talk openly about how much their latchkey childhood still affects them. These parents are reflective and surprisingly honest about how they've consciously chosen to parent differently, to be more present and involved with their own kids as a direct response to what they didn't have growing up. When Gen X parents get involved, some have noticed they can be even more protective than the generation before them. They've been called stealth fighter parents, which means they aren't hovering 24/7, but when something actually matters, they go all in. They'll let you handle your own drama most of the time, but if something serious comes up, they'll show up to the principal's office ready to fight with an intensity that catches everyone off guard. This wasn't necessarily the plan. Many Gen X parents swore they wouldn't be overbearing because they valued the independence they had. But then they had kids and something quietly shifted. The memory of coming home to an empty house, of navigating problems alone and wondering if anyone was really paying attention can come flooding back. Psychology helps explain this shift. Psychologist Diana Baumrind spent years studying parenting styles based on two things: responsiveness, how warm and emotionally available a parent is, and demandingness, how much they expect in terms of rules and boundaries. The authoritative style, which is high on both warmth and expectations, is when parents are emotionally present but also have clear rules. This is different from authoritarian parenting, which is just strict without emotional support, or permissive parenting, which is all warmth but no boundaries. Authoritative parenting says, "I care about you and I'm here for you, but you still have to face the consequences of your decisions." Studies show kids raised this way tend to handle emotions better, have higher self-esteem, and deal with less anxiety and depression. While there isn't a massive study on Gen X as a whole, their approach of being present but not suffocating maps onto this framework almost perfectly. Since Gen X knows struggle in a specific way, graduating into recessions, watching secure retirement plans disappear, and seeing job security evaporate, it changes how they prepare their own kids. You can't promise them the system will protect them, so instead you try to make them tough enough to handle whatever comes their way. However, they are doing this in a world completely different from the one they grew up in. Gen X is the first generation raising kids in the era of social media, where everything is compared and judged online. For people who grew up when privacy was normal, the idea of posting every achievement online feels unnatural. This might be why Gen X parents often seem so emotionally tired. They are the sandwich generation, squeezed between aging boomer parents who think they're coddling their kids and Gen Z kids who sometimes think they're too strict. You are translating between worlds that don't speak the same language anymore. Your parents think you're too soft, your kids think you're too hard. You're trying to take the valuable parts of your upbringing, independence and resilience, and combine them with what you wished you'd had: emotional availability and the sense that someone was genuinely paying attention. Interestingly, Gen X parents tend not to worry too much about external standards. That latchkey experience taught them that external validation is unreliable. They parent according to an internal sense of what matters, calibrated by their own memories. This means they might let a teenager make the same mistake twice because they know repetition is how learning happens, but they will be there at 2 a.m. when it all falls apart, ready to help without judgment. They remember what it was like to have no one to call. There is also the factor of technology. Gen X is old enough to remember life before the internet. They had childhoods where boredom was a requirement for creativity. They know what presence feels like because they've experienced both worlds. When they set boundaries around screens, it comes from lived experience rather than fear. They understand the tools, but question the costs. They're more comfortable with technology than their parents, but more skeptical of it than their children. When you see a Gen X parent looking uncomfortable at a school event surrounded by hovering parents, yet they are still fully present for their child, you're seeing that unique balance. They want to raise kids who feel both secure and independent, knowing someone has their back, but also knowing how to handle their own business. It isn't perfect, and it doesn't always match what the experts say, but for a generation described as the least nurtured in history, the fact that they're showing up emotionally is a massive shift. They're breaking the cycle of how they were raised while trying to keep the good parts. It's complicated, and it doesn't fit into neat categories, and for Gen X, that's exactly the point.